God established one church. He promised his church infallibility, and he would never abandon his church, and he would forever be with it. Christ, with his almighty power, conferred the church with infallibility. But how did Christ do it, they asked. They continued. Was it Peter that Christ promised infallibility, or was it the universal church? If we reply, Peter alone is the only infallible bishop, then we deny the church has infallibility. But if we say that Christ promised the church infallibility and not Peter uniquely, then we deny Vatican I. How would we reply? We say Christ established infallibility in a unique way that has three distinct modes that goes like this. The first mode. Christ told Peter that upon him he would build his church and the gates of hell won't prevail against it. Since that Christ promised to Peter that the gates of hell won't prevail against him, it follows that Peter won't fall when heresy comes about. When, in the exercise of his office as shepherd and teacher of all Christians in virtue of his supreme apostolic authority, he defines a doctrine concerning faith or morals to be held by the whole church, he possesses by the divine assistance promised to him in blessed Peter that infallibility which the divine Redeemer willed his church to enjoy in defining doctrine concerning faith or morals. Since Peter is assisted by God, when he defines something concerning faith or morals, he is protected by God from error. It is said to Peter, and the gates of hell won't prevail against it. So thus Peter is infallible in this unique way. The second mode. The bishops scattered all over the world are in fact infallible. The ordinary and universal magisterium, which is the magisterium of the whole church dispersed throughout the world, is infallible when it proposes a doctrine of faith and morals, as to be believed as divinely revealed, or as definitively to be held. The third mode. The bishops gather together in a council united to the Pope. When the bishops are with the Pope, it is certain that they cannot err. Although the individual bishops do not enjoy the prerogative of infallibility, they nevertheless proclaim Christ's doctrine infallibly whenever and authentically teaching matters in faith and morals. They are in agreement on one position as definitively to be held. This is even more clearly verified when gathered together in an ecumenical council. They are teachers and judges of faith and morals for the universal church, whose definitions must be adhered to with the submission of faith. The infallibility promised to the church resides also in the body of bishops. When that body exercises the supreme magisterium with the successor of Peter, to these definitions the assent of the church can never be wanting, on account of the activity of that same Holy Spirit, by which the whole flock of Christ is preserved in progress in unity. Papal infallibility is often confused with papal authority, universal and immediate jurisdiction, leading to questions and objections that actually deal with papal supremacy, not infallibility. For example, since the Pope cannot decree in opposition to the bishops, we shouldn't see the Pope overruling votes from bishops in ecumenical councils. But this isn't about the Pope using his prerogative as infallible teacher. Instead, it's about his supreme authority in his immediate jurisdiction. To clarify, let's define two kinds of papal decrees: a primary decree and a secondary decree. A primary decree occurs when the Pope consults the bishops, either scattered globally or gathered in an ecumenical council to learn what they believe. If all the bishops, those professing the true faith infallibly, agree, the Pope then defines infallibly in explicit terms the faith they professed. A secondary decree occurs when the bishops want an issue discussed, defined, but the Pope can deny the request for certain reasons. 1. The issue needs further examination. Or 2. There is no need to define the dogma because the topic could just be too vague or unsupported by church fathers and church theologians. When the Pope denies such a request, he is not decreeing in opposition to the bishops within a primary decree context, as explained above. Then they ask the question, why can't the Pope decree in opposition to the bishops when they profess their faith infallibly? To answer this question, we must go to the official interpretation of Vatican I. Bishop Gasser in his official relatio related the following, quote, "But in saying this, we do not separate the pontiff from his ordained union with the church, for the Pope is only infallible when exercising his function as teacher of all Christians and therefore representing the whole church. He judges and defines what must be believed or rejected by all. He is no more able to be separated from the universal church than the foundation from the building it is destined to support. Indeed, we do not separate the Pope defining from the cooperation and consent of the church, at least in the sense that we do not exclude his cooperation in this consent of the church. This is clear from the purpose for which this prerogative has been divinely granted." This is very clear. The Pope cannot be separated from the Church when he decrees ex cathedra. Whatever the universal Church believes, according to Bishop Gaser, the Pope cannot decree in opposition because he cannot be separated from the consent of the Church when he issues a decree. Now, many objectors like to bring up the argument that the only thing stopping the Pope from issuing an ex cathedra decree is himself, but that is simply not true. Papal infallibility is limited, and the Pope cannot decree something ex cathedra if it is not what the Church believes. Bishop Gaser relates, quote, "I reply and openly admit, in no sense is pontifical infallibility absolute, because absolute infallibility belongs to God alone, who is the first and essential truth, and who is never able to deceive or be deceived. All other infallibility, as communicated for a specific purpose, has its limits and its conditions under which it is considered to be present. The same is valid in reference to the infallibility of the Roman pontiff. For this infallibility is bound by certain limits and conditions." End quote. So the Pope cannot simply decree something ex cathedra on a random Tuesday just because his will is so pleased. The Pope is not divinely inspired. He is divinely assisted. This means he does not receive new knowledge from God when he makes an ex cathedra decree. Rather, he receives the faith from the Church and formally decrees what the Church already believes. As Vatican I says, quote, "For the Holy Spirit was promised to the successors of Peter, not so that they might, by his revelation, make known some new doctrine, but that, by his assistance, they might religiously guard and faithfully expound the revelation or deposit the faith transmitted by the apostles." End quote. As the Swiss bishop said, quote, "After the council, as before, the popes will exercise their office as doctors and chief pastors in the Church, without forgetting that the bishops are appointed with them by the Holy Spirit, and according to the constitution of the Church as successors of the apostles, in order that in concert with the Pope in subordination to the successor of the Prince of the Apostles, they may govern the Church of God. As the Pope did before the council, so now afterward will they continue to strengthen their brethren, the bishops in the faith. So also in the government of the Church, never will they undertake anything which concerns the universal Church without taking counsel and advice of the bishops. As they did before the council, so now also afterwards will the Pope summon councils, as the advice of the bishops scattered over the world, use every means in their power to obtain full understanding respecting the deposit of the faith which has been confined to the Church. It will be according to this only, an immutable rule of the faith, that they will decide, as if in court of supreme and last instance, an infallibility for the universal Church, all questions which can possibly arise on faith and morals." End quote. Pope Pius XII did this before he defined the Assumption of Mary. Quote, "Cardinals, patriarchs, archbishops, bishops, priests, religious of both sexes, associations, universities, and innumerable private persons have reached the Holy See, all begging that the bodily assumption into heaven of the Blessed Virgin should be defined and proclaimed as a dogma of faith. And certainly no one is unaware of the fact that this was fervently requested by almost 200 fathers in the Vatican Council. We had to examine most carefully whatever it would be lawful, convenient and useful to support with our authority the above mentioned petitions. We earnestly beg you to inform us about the devotion of our clergy and people, taking into account their faith and piety toward the Assumption of the Most Blessed Virgin Mary. More especially, we wish to know if you, venerable brother, with your learning and prudence, consider that the bodily assumption of the Immaculate Blessed Virgin can be proposed and defined as a dogma, and whatever in addition to your own wishes this is desired by your clergy and people. So notice how Pope Pius XII, before he defined the Assumption of Mary, consulted the bishops about what they believed before he decreed. If the results had been, in an impossible case by the way, overwhelmingly negative, then the Pope could not have decreed it, because he would not have been fulfilling his job as Pope. The Pope is to decree what the Church believes, not what it doesn't believe. Thus, the Pope cannot decree in opposition to the bishops. That is the end of this video. I really do hope you liked the video and you understand the Papal Minimalist position better. So, that will be it of the video. That's all. God bless.